Welcome to Desert Well, a place where we gather like travelers, finding refreshment and community around life's most essential source. Throughout history, wells have been places where people pause their journey, places where they share stories and find the sustenance they need to continue on. But we're here because we've discovered something even better. Jesus promised that whoever drinks from the water he gives will never thirst again. That living water doesn't just satisfy, it becomes a spring welling up to eternal life. So whether you're navigating the challenges of family life, wrestling with questions of faith, or simply trying to live faithfully in a complicated world, we invite you to pull up a chair around this well. Here, we'll explore how God's unchanging word speaks into our everyday experiences, offering wisdom, hope, and the kind of refreshment that truly lasts. This is Desert Well, where life's conversations meet living water.
Welcome back to the Desert Well, where we are gathering as we are every week around the well that is Jesus to drink deeply from his good news and also to be a part of the conversation. Usually I might say at this point, welcome to sunny Las Vegas, but as we are recording this, it is cloudy Las Vegas with a more than 90% chance of rain tomorrow, the 15th of November, which is unbelievable. I have never seen the chance of rain that high in the time that I have been here.
Now watch it not rain.
Yeah, right. Well, and that would be, hey, it's always 90%. That doesn't mean 100%. There could be a small chance where it doesn't rain. Regardless, though, whatever the weather is into the future, probably cold and all those sort of things, we hope that you're doing well. Glad that you are here. As always, if you find whatever we talk about today helpful, please share it with those people that you love, those friends that you want to be around the well that is Jesus. I want to do two things before we talk about what we're talking about today. And first and foremost is to give a shout out to Miss Sandy Oman, who came up to me after our Gen Z conversation had come out and talked to me on Sunday morning and said, hey, you forgot about Gen X. And I think my words were either what's Gen X, which is like just too stereotypical, or I am so sorry. And so to those of you that listen to this that are Gen X, which is between the boomers and millennials, and so this is like my parents' generation.
Okay.
They are often called this is great. So this is proving her point entirely. Derek's like, who's that? Like, who are you talking about? And they are called oftentimes either the forgotten, the overlooked, hey, we're not millennials and we're not boomers, but we're here and we're still happy to do what we're here to do, but don't talk to us. So I've made all of them already uncomfortable by even referencing them. But nevertheless, here you are. We're happy that you are here to Gen X people, and you have something unique to contribute, just like the millennials, just like the boomers, just like every other generation does. But I want to start with a story from this book, Future Church. We have talked about this a few times on the podcast. I recommended it as one of the videos in the series we did on 5 books every Christian should read. Our board of directors has read this. It's just a phenomenal, I think, framing for what is a church supposed to be about and what are they supposed to be doing. And so in one of the chapters, he opens up with this story, and I'm going to read directly from the text here, the story that Will Mancini writes. He writes, I'm going to probably butcher this guy's name, but nevertheless, Richard Canwisser, the senior pastor of Peachtree Church in Atlanta, is a proud dog owner. One time, Rich started training Shasta, a mini Australian shepherd, that he got his girls for Christmas. But he felt that he needed professional training to help go the rest of the way, so he hired a dog trainer. When the trainer came to Rich's house, Rich wanted to get him up to speed on Shasta's progress. So Rich demonstrated for the trainer what he was already able to get his dog to do: sit, roll over, and so on. After the demonstration, Rich expected the trainer to give him an attaboy for his amateur dog training prowess. But he was disappointed. Instead, the trainer deflated him. Your dog is not trained, the trainer said. He just knows a few tricks. The new paragraph here. When Rich absorbed what the dog trainer told him, a light bulb turned on his mind. He wondered if something similar could be said of millions of followers of Jesus in churches across North America. Your attenders are not trained. They just know a few church tricks. They know how to sing along with the songs on Sunday morning. They know how to pray out loud with holy talk that everyone else uses. They know how to interact in a small group study. They might even know how to give an acceptable percentage of their income. But does that mean they display automatic responses in the way of Jesus in their daily lives? More importantly, how would Rich tell the difference? There are just some things that you come across, that you read, that resonate with you so deeply and that are so powerful that you can't help but stop and go, wow. And for me, this is one of those moments. I read this and was like, that is so good. And it's good not because I think everyone is pretending, not because I think the church is full of people who just know church tricks, but because I think it gets to the heart of one of the reasons we do this thing that we're doing today, right? That we're not just here to sit around and talk. This is not a, I think I'm so good and I want you to listen to me, or a, I just want you to listen to the sound of my voice. My ego is not tied into this, right? I could care less what you think of me. But what I want for you, for all of us, so I think I can speak for Derek too, is we want you to not know church tricks, but we want you to know and live the way of Jesus. Yep. And so especially today, absolutely, as we talk about like a report or a data thing, I know that not everyone likes numbers, and I know that not everybody likes data, but it's with this goal in mind of trying to get us all to see what it means to live the way of Jesus in all that we think and all that we say and all that we do. And so with that framing, maybe I should pause, Derek. I've talked a whole bunch. Is there anything you want to add before we dive in?
About the
go ahead.
You know, what you read from the book. Like, my first gut reaction was like dagger, right, like straight to the heart. Very convicting. It's like, okay, well, am I a part of that? Like, do I just know a bunch of church tricks? You know, so yeah, I think it was very eye-opening. So I think it was a good lead into what we're talking about today too, with this report. So yeah, community discipleship, etc. It's good stuff in this report today.
And so we are talking about the article from Barna Research Group is called The Power of Community. And this comes from some research they've done with another organization called GLOO, GLOO. And their goal in this whole thing, it's called the state of the church. And so it's trying to help churches measure important things, but then actually help people do exactly what, you know, this future church book is trying to get, to live in the way of Jesus, to be like him, think like him, do like him, all those sort of things. And so this is just one of many different things that they have published that come out of this report. But this is one that we felt like was somewhat at least interesting enough and perhaps enough for us to grab onto, that would be relevant, that would be applicable to you, to us as we listen to it. So,
well, not only relevant, but it ties into what we've kind of been talking about over the last
good
few
episodes.
Go there.
Tell us why.
Well, we've talked about community, we've talked about generations, we've talked about discipleship earlier on, but this kind of ties all of those together in a way that I would not have thought about, and so it's interesting to read this report and the information from it and kind of tie it into what we've talked about in the past, because there's some like interesting generational things that I think we kind of hit the nail on the head with in the last few episodes. But now actually having some like physical numbers to it is interesting too.
So I want to start with maybe another sort of story, or another, call it parable, maybe is another way to think about it. So if you were to think about or put on a list, what are the top 5 things that are causing and affecting people's health in a negative way today, you might put things like cancer, right? Like cancer and heart disease are killing people, right? So whether it's the way we eat, whether it's the things that we put into our body, whether it's the environment around us, all of that contributes to that. You might think that just poverty in general, disease, right? Not just in the United States, but in the world, causes a lot of people's health to have problems with. You might think that, hey, this is I'm spacing out on what I want to say. Whatever. So you're going to think of various health things, right? So it's aging, it's the body's breaking down, all those sort of things. But what I don't think many of us would put on a list of what's causing us to have health problems is that we feel alone. And so there's this great book, I think, called Together. I'm forgetting the name now too. Wow, I'm really forgetful this Friday. But the great book by the previous Surgeon General, I think now like 2 presidents ago, and he wrote about what he called an epidemic of loneliness, that many people felt and feel alone. And he tied some like crazy statistics to it, something like it's the same as smoking a whole bunch of packs of cigarettes a day, that it decreases your lively. Yes. Yep. That being alone is is so harmful to your body that it is equivalent to smoking and cigarettes. And so, I mean, it is that powerful of a thing. And this makes sense as a follower of Jesus. Yeah. You can go look it up. Because go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we were made to be in community. We were made to be with people. So it makes sense from that standpoint. Absolutely. But it just is, that was just a wild connection there. But
yeah. And so I always tell every couple that I'm counseling for premarital stuff, the first time we meet together, we always go back to the Garden of Eden. And in the beginning, God makes the heavens, the earth, all those sort of things. Everything is what? Good. He likes it. He says, man, I'm awesome. Look at this thing that I made. And then he makes Adam. And then the strangest thing happens, because there's not sin in the world yet. The fall has not happened. But what does God say?
It's not good for man to be alone.
Good. Correct. And so in God's good earth that he made, he actually finds and sees something that he says is not good. And what is it? It's that somebody is alone, that they don't have a partner, that they don't have community, that they don't have someone to walk alongside. And I think we've all had moments in our life that we can relate to that experience for, that we know, maybe not the like, wow, I'm actually losing years of my life because of how lonely I feel. But we know the feeling of emptiness that we feel when we're not alone, when we don't have that community, how hard not just the big things in life are, but even the small things, that when you feel alone, everything is hard when you're alone. And so maybe I'm just trying to like overzealously sell why this is important.
Community is important.
Right. But I think it's one of those things that if it goes without saying, it doesn't get said. But also it might be something we overlook as important.
Yeah.
That for a church that says, hey, we're a family of faith and a school family too, that we might overlook just how much that really actually matters. Like not a lip service sort of thing, but a core identity, who we are, what we've been created for, and what we need in our life.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like a challenge for us as an organization too. Like, are we doing enough? What we're doing, is it effective? Is it providing a sense of community for people that meets this powerful need?
Right. And so this goes into the first thing. So I'm going to try and tie these statistics to some sort of, call it tangible, some sort of, call it application, so that then we're not just saying, oh yeah, 41, 58, 94, 37, that we're trying to really try and bring this home. So the first thing they talk about here is that relational flourishing increases with church attendance. And so what they did was they tried to gauge people's relational flourishing based on a combined score from two different statements. First, I am content with my friendships and relationships. And second, my relationships are as satisfying as I would want them to be. And what they've done here is they've divided this up between all U.S. adults, practicing Christians, non-practicing Christians, and non-Christians in general. And of all United States adults, 45% of people answered a 9 or a 10. So they scored a 9 or 10. High score, right? I have friends and relationships. They're content with them. They're satisfying as I want them to be. Which to me, I don't know. Does that seem low to you?
But that's 45% of people who are scoring a 9 or a 10.
That's fair. I guess we don't know what the lower numbers are.
Good. It would be interesting to see what the percentage was that scored a 7 or 8.
True.
So we don't have all the data, so we just know the 9 to 10. But I think that's a fairly good number overall.
Maybe I'm just feeling pessimistic that I want people to feel so connected and known that to say, if you look around in our room of 100 people at 8 o'clock, 50 of them are not completely satisfied or content with where they are.
Right. But now let's compare it to the next one, though, because this is where this is statistically, I would say statistically alarming, maybe is the word, because it's
Sure.
a big enough difference. So I'll let you go ahead with this one.
So I'm assuming you're talking about the difference between practicing Christians and non-practicing Christians, right? So,
or just all U.S. adults in general.
Terms in general. So, when they use the word practicing Christians, what they mean by that is anyone who says their faith is important and they attend church once a month, right? So anyone who says their faith is important to them and attends church once a month is, by their definition, a practicing Christian. We've talked about that before on the podcast, how that's generally considered normal these days.
Regularly.
Right. Right. Which is just, again, that's a whole different other discussion. But in some ways, we'll see maybe why that might increase too. So in this, of those people who actually follow Jesus, who practice, who come to church at least once a month, that number of how content am I in a 9 or a 10 goes up to basically 60%. So it goes up to 59%. But then if you compare that to non-practicing Christians or non-Christians, and so they don't give the definition, but I'm assuming non-practicing means they say faith is important, but they don't actually attend worship,
right?
Don't actually go to church at least monthly. And so that number drops. If you remember, all U.S. was 45. That number drops down to 40%, 41% for non-practicing Christians. And so there's a giant 20% gap between people who are active in their faith community, right? Not just I believe in Jesus, it's me, myself, and I, but I believe in Jesus and I practice this thing with other people. Mm-hmm. That 60%, that means in a room of 100, 60 of the people there are, this is amazing. I've got friends that know me. I'm content with where they are. I'm satisfied with the relationships that I have, compared to if you're not a part of the church, that same 100 people, only 40 of them feel that way. To me, this is like, in some ways, it's not surprising, but in some ways, it's like very shocking, right? Because we know this, but to actually see it played out and lived out in like a data-based sort of study is really cool.
Yeah. Well, and I would always, I'm like trying not to be like, well, the correlation here does not necessarily equal causation, right? Anytime I'm analyzing data, we have to dig deeper into this before we
Right.
make some wild claims. But 20% is not insignificant. That is a big enough statistical difference that you can make some, I think, really clear inferences from, and pull some of, some further data out of that about why are practicing Christians that much more content within their community. And so if it was like 3, 4, 5%, that's relatively negligible, but this is 20% we're talking about here. So yeah, that was very eye-opening as I was reading through this. I was like, oh, wait, you're telling me 20%, 19% more? That's wild.
Right. Which is just, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of gain. And I think, so I'm always one who like just loves to look at the difference and say, oh yeah, look at this. That totally means this is what it means. And this is totally causation. And Emily always reminds me, well, that's nice. Good for you. Like that's not how it works though. And so I think this is another point where we have to say, well, that makes sense. If you come to church, you don't ever talk to anyone, you don't stick around for fellowship, you're in the door, out the door, you sit in your pew and you don't walk around for sharing the peace. Instead, you just kind of give the cold shoulder to everyone and you give them an elbow and say, go away, I don't want to talk to you. Then you're probably not going to have that relational bump that those people who are active in their community get and experience. And so it isn't as simple as long as I'm in the room, this mysterious relationshipy spirit is going to come upon me and I'm going to feel satisfied. No, you got to actually do the stuff and be with people, which is why I think we use that language of family so much here. It's why we do the fellowship stuff, even though I think some people might associate fellowship with eating. It's more of a, what do we talk about while we're eating? That's important. And then it's also why we share the peace. No, it's not the time to have the 20-minute conversation about, your uncle and your aunt and your cousin, brother, stepmother, cousin, something. But it is a time to acknowledge the relationships we have with each other, that we are here together and that we literally, because in worship, usually we're all facing forward, but when we share the peace, we all turn towards each other and say, hey, I see you. The peace of Jesus is with you. Peace be with you. Peace also be with you. All these sort of things. It's a beautiful expression of the relationships that we have together as a family of faith.
Yeah, it's great. And I would say too, like for somebody who is more introverted, which might be a shock to people, I don't know. If you know me well, I'm definitely more of an introvert, but I can turn on the extrovert switch fairly easily. It's very easy for me to like pull away and say, no, I want to sit in my pew. I don't want to get up and walk around. I don't want to serve. I don't want to do those things. But especially like after reading this, is like, no, okay, there needs to be a little bit more effort, even for myself in this and what what I'm doing with my own discipleship. And yeah, so I don't want to get too far into this and give too much away yet, but
yeah, you're good. And so the next part, I think they could have taken this and went a million different ways with what they then decided to talk about. And so the rest of it you'll see as we walk through it doesn't deal with much things other than, I would call it discipleship mentoring is how the phrase I would use. And so they're going to take that sort of, hey, we're created for community. Hey, we're created for relationship, and ask the question, well, what is relationship for? Right? What good is this connection we feel with each other? What should be the ends that we pursue with it? What should be the things that we should focus on with it? And they're going to talk about how those relationships are leveraged, if you will, or utilized for discipleship and mentoring. And so, again, terms are important. The definition Barna gives, the people who ran the study for discipleship, is this. They write, being discipled means someone is intentionally walking alongside you to help you grow spiritually and live out the disciplines of the Christian faith. So one more time, being discipled means someone is intentionally walking alongside you to help you grow spiritually and live out the disciplines of the Christian faith. And so they would say that that is one of the goals or one of the things that community should be for or should be used for. And I think if you were to ask me beforehand, how many people would you say this is happening to, or how many people would say that this is happening to themselves, I would have probably said something like 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Like very low, at least in the Lutheran church. And maybe this is where the difference between sort of a non-denominational language type, we just don't really use this language as much as more of the evangelical world does around us. But nevertheless, if you were to ask me, I would say, hey, maybe 30% or so. But according to their study, 64%, almost 2/3 of people said that they were presently being discipled according to this definition.
Yeah, meaning they had somebody that is walking alongside them and helping them with their walk, right? Their Christian faith, which
is crazy.
And I was thinking about that definition and the intentional, so intentionally walking alongside you. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? That like you have somebody that you call up and like, are you studying with them? Like, are you just praying with them? What level are they looking at here? And what level of involvement does that really mean? But nevertheless, it is, again, I would say a promising number. I think that we've been a little bit surprised with some of the reports and numbers that we've seen lately. And so I would say this is a good thing that 64% of people feel like they're being discipled well, at least.
Right. And so in my life, if you were to ask me what this looks like, when I was in college, I was part of a mentor program for people who wanted to go into church work, be a pastor, etc. And I met with a local pastor. We tried to meet like every month. And we did that for a year. So, I mean, we met 12 times in a year. Mm-hmm. And we met and we would usually talk about some book that we were trying to make our way through. He would ask me if I had any questions. I would ask him any questions I had about ministry, about being a pastor, about faith in general. And that was what that looked like in that case. Now, we had Pastor Barry on here. I would call Barry my mentor, right? So he is the guy. I just spent an hour on the phone with him a couple days ago talking about ministry, talking about leading and all these sort of things. But we also talk about faith and discipleship in general. And that is not a scheduled thing. It's one of those, I usually send him a text and say, hey, Barry, it's probably time we should talk again. It's been a while. We should have a conversation. And yet it's discipleship.
Yep.
Because it's someone who's intentionally walking alongside of me to help me grow spiritually and live out the disciplines of the Christian faith, albeit you might think about it or you could see it as a professional mentor. I would say it's much more than that.
Well, and I would say that goes both ways though too. Right? So like he is your mentor and he is helping to disciple you, but in reverse, that discipleship, aspect is also there for him too. So, and this is one thing that I will always say is that you learn far more when you have to teach something. At least in my experience as a teacher, you learn far more when you actually have to teach the subject, teach the content. And so if you are walking alongside somebody and helping them, learn more about God, about Jesus, about what it means to be a Christian, what does it mean to be a disciple, that aspect of the relationship too is going to benefit the mentor as well.
And so the question then I'm asking, and I think I would ask people to think about, is the next thing to talk about, and that's who. So who is that person in your life that is doing this for you? And I'll let you sort of, Derek, talk through some of the ones that you found interesting about like who they were and what maybe you saw there. But to me, I think some of these answers make a little bit more sense why perhaps more people answered yes than I thought they would, because of who they're looking to as that disciple person, and maybe in a way that I am just been oblivious to or ignorant to. So who did people say?
Sorry, I wasn't laughing when you were talking about anything that you were saying. It was just funny because both of us were tilting our head to read it.
You can't see them.
Text.
Yeah, the texts are vertical on our screens on the charts, and
so I'm
the
over here looking like
this.
I see Jared doing the same thing. I was like, okay.
I'm surprised we got a crick in our neck. It's that time of year.
Yeah, I'm surprised that family is not up there higher as like one of the top 3. Like it's the 4th one, but it's not really close to number 3. It's 7% lower than small group or Bible study. So it goes personal mentor was the top one, and then pastor of current church, small group Bible study is the 3rd, and then a family member is 4th. I thought that was kind of surprising because for me, at least over the last 10 years, my father-in-law has been one of those for me. I can call him up and just say, hey, what do you think about this, or what do I need to know here? Even just like in how he has carried himself and what he, how he leads his family and things. That has been something that I look up to with him. So that was like family member is up there. My mom and I, we talk frequently about faith and all that too. So I would put her up there. So that one was shocking. The other ones I would say are all fairly equal, right? 10 to 14%. A friend or a coworker, I was probably surprised that it was as low as it was at 14%. You would think that one might be a little bit higher because we spend just as much time with our coworkers as we do with family members oftentimes, if depending on your job and your role. So that one was a little bit surprising too. But a personal mentor was number 1 at 29%. So that was interesting too, because again, for me, I don't know that I would say that I have a personal mentor.
Right.
Like at this point in my life, I have had in the past, but like right now, so I would be one of those that would have definitely answered a family member or a coworker, friend, as one of my top 2.
And I think an interesting thing to consider here, and perhaps obviously not in any sort of data, is that do we even realize mentoring or discipling by mentorship when it's happening? If
Probably
that makes sense? Yeah. And so it's one of those like, so another book, I think I recommended it in the series, is You Are What You Love. And he basically claims in this book that the ways in which we live and the things that we do repeatedly direct or shape and form our loves, our desires to certain things, but that we don't normally think or see them in that way. And so in a similar vein, I wonder if we don't think or see our mentorship, our discipleship as it's happening when it's happening, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so, it's just a simple idea that, you're shocked that your family member, someone reported their family member as less than, something else, but perhaps the impact a family member has on someone is actually so much greater than they realize, that it just isn't for them. It's not the intentional walking alongside of, right? It's we just live together and do everything together. And, that can't be considered discipleship or mentoring because it's just living together. Well, sure. But it also could be viewed in that way too. And so I wonder if that plays a role in maybe some of the surprise, if you will, of who that person is.
Yeah, I think so. And I wonder too with this survey, because I'm going up a little bit here on the report to where it says that uh, half of the people who are being discipled, so of that 64%, half of them are also discipling somebody else. So 51%.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So it's half of the people are also then walking alongside. So it'd be interesting to see like how that continues to like matriculate down, and how far one person's impact with somebody can really travel and have an impact on you know uh, the multiplication of people just through the discipling and continual discipling of others. Um, so like 64%, so we're talking 30% of 32% of all churchgoers are actively mentoring, discipling others.
Right.
And to me, that's a good number.
But it's nowhere near where it should be.
Right.
I'll play the pessimist today. I'll be the glass half full guy. That's a 37% of churchgoers say they're currently discipling someone else. That's too low. And maybe that's like hey, again, I don't realize that I am, or I wouldn't call myself that. Self-view is so important here that maybe people just wouldn't see themselves as like I'm not a discipling anyone. What are you talking about? Like that, I'm not a pastor. That's not my job. But at the same time, that's what I feel like Jesus calls us to do, is to go and make disciples. It's the Great Commission. And so how do you do that? But by helping someone not just come to faith, but learn what it means to live in their faith, to grow in their faith, to, like we say, learn, live, and love like Jesus does.
Yeah.
I think the thing that was so surprising here, and then we can go on, is that the pastor was that person for 26% of people. And this is where okay, I guess I could see that, you especially with all the content that we push and do here for this very reason, almost to help people grow in their faith, right? It's not just Jesus died for you, he loves you, but we're interested in how people are living out their faith and becoming more and more like Jesus. And so it would make sense then that even if I'm not having phone call conversations with everyone, I don't talk to more than 20 people on the phone in a week, most certainly not. And yet I'm sure a lot of people view me as the discipleship person for them. And so there's some curious, if that's true, then what should I do, or how should I think, or how should we think about ourselves as a church, or what are the sort of things that I should do more of? I mean, there's a lot of very interesting questions to ask.
Sure.
If, according to this data, 26% of people view their pastor as the one who's discipling them.
Well, and I wonder too if people are just makes the most sense that he's the one that this is his job. So I'm gonna say that he is the one that is discipling me. I wonder if there's an element of that in there too. I was gonna mention this very first sentence in one of these paragraphs here, above that data, that discipleship should be dynamic, an ongoing invitation from one Christian to the next. So I think that is a neat way to picture the discipleship journey and walking alongside one another, that it's an invitation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you continue to multiply how you've been discipled, is that you invite somebody else to come in, and then they can invite somebody else, and then they invite somebody else, they invite somebody else. And so, yeah, I when I was reading through that too, I was like, oh, that's really simple, but yet I think powerful.
And I think it's a good time here to just say that when you think about a discipleship relationship with somebody, that it doesn't have to be, somebody calls you and says, hey, Mr. Blessing, can you be my discipleship mentor? I mean, that it can be like that. That's not bad. But I think sometimes we get stuck on the formality, or stuck on the, I gotta be fully committed into this thing, head over heels, dive in. And I think a discipleship relationship can look like something that happens on the golf course, at the bowling alley, over a meal, over coffee, over a workout, over playing with kids. I mean, whatever it is, that those sort of relationships can almost just bubble to the surface and just happen, or just come to be at times, that when we authentically live with each other, and not transactionally. I'll use the word that Ella used a couple of weeks ago, or that you did for her and she agreed with you, that when we don't act transactionally with each other, that then in some ways we live into God's design for the world, and that's just kind of how things come out to be. That we begin to disciple each other and lead each other, that it's not just one way, but it's both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good lead into this next part too.
Go ahead.
So it says, where two or more are gathered, meaningful community may start in small groups. And this is something that I think, and according to this, 77% of churches have small groups. To me, that seems low. I would think.
But it depends on what they define as a small group.
True. Well, do small groups, is that a Bible study? Like, do they think about, do they consider those small groups? But anyway, 77% of churches have small groups, and 73% of church goers attend a small group or a Bible study. And that's at least once every 2 or 3 months. So it's not an every week type of thing, but it is once every 2 or 3 months, which that seems crazy. That
our small group meets 4 times a year.
Yeah. I guess if your small group meets once a month, you are still dedicating time to being with people and in the community. So yeah, I think it's fine.
And so this is where, again, I think the idea of they don't give us what a term is here, but I don't participate in a small group because I don't invite people over to my house, where we watch some big, pastor with a fancy video and then talk about it. Like that is a very narrow sense of the word. I would say that you could, and that's an important qualifier here, that these could be small groups, but we would have to intentionally do it. So things like choir could be a small group. Things like Sunday morning Bible study, Tuesday morning Bible study could be a small group, assuming that we do the sort of intentional walking along with each other. And one of the thing they ask people is, what extent would you disagree with some of the following? My small group would fill in the blank. And the first 3 things here is, again, we got the neck crank going on here. What would support me in a time of need, is a place I feel like I belong, has effective and trustworthy leadership, and then we'll end at this one, feels like family. And so it's curious to me, as you hear those, there's not, the first one is not, I feel like I learn a lot, or I feel like I perform a lot, or I'm able to use my gifts and talents and abilities. It's very centered in the relationships that people have with each other within that group.
Yep.
And so a choir could support each other in their time of need, could be a place for somebody to belong, could have effective leadership, and could feel like a family, as could a Bible study, as could, a group of parents playing on a playground after worship, or as could people who are standing in our small little entryway that we can barely call a narthex, talking after worship. All of these sort of things could become that, but would take intentional effort, energy to make it this way, to create these sort of opportunities to share what's going on, to be supported, to become like a family.
Well, and I'm just going to read this next part here. because I think it's better coming from this report than it is coming from me saying it or you saying it. Well, I'll just read this whole paragraph. Few small group attendees have anything negative to say about their small group experience. If you've been debating the value of a small group, rest assured, to offer or attend a small group at all seems to be a positive move. So here's where I will interject and I will say, well, this is me talking. Do it. If you have a question about it, if you've ever thought about doing it, do it. You won't regret it. I personally have never had a negative experience with it. It's always something that has been rewarding, and this data is showing that as well. Very few people have anything negative to say at all about small groups. So if you're interested, find a small group, start a small group, join one. You won't regret it.
And even today, we're recording Friday, the lunch punch, right? That counts as a small group. The prayer warriors, that counts as a small group. And so in some ways, it's about seeing every group as an opportunity for community. And so I think some people get caught up in the language of small group that could be distracting. So just call it a gathering, right? Or call it our Bible study group, or call it our home group, or you could just even call it your friends. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? What matters, though, is what's happening, what's taking place there. And in some ways, this sort of bears out what we started with, that if you're connected in worship, you're coming at least once a month, you're going to feel more connected to people, assuming that you're having those relationships. And you could add the +1 to that. How much more would you feel like your relationships are good if you're also spending more intentional time other than just in worship, where in worship, I mean, sure, we interact with each other a little bit. Maybe we go to fellowship afterwards, but a small group where you're exploring the word together, where you're talking about life with each other, you're going to get a lot more opportunities for relational connection with people in a setting like that than you even would get in worship too.
Yep.
So let's talk about what, Derek, prevented people from doing this, because I think this is a big thing.
Yeah. Do you want to spend a lot of time on this, or do we want to tie it back into like the generational thing and spend a little bit of time there too?
Sure, we can go there. That's fine.
Okay, because I feel like we've talked about these 4 barriers, at least in some level, some depth. But the 4 big barriers as identified by this research was a lack of time. So people just say, I simply don't have time to meet in a small group, to be engaged beyond the typical Sunday worship. There's a lack of commitment. So just saying that they're too busy. So, I might be able to do it, but probably not because I'm just busy. Is kind of how I read that. A lack of comfort. So just, we like to be in our bubble, in our safe little zone. And when we try to branch outside of that, we feel uncomfortable and uneasy about things. And so stepping out and doing something new, being engaged with different people can be a scary thing. So a lack of comfortability with different people is a barrier, and a lack of awareness. So just simply don't know. People just don't know that there are opportunities for them to be involved in small groups, to be engaged in the church body in some other way, shape, or form.
All right, so let's talk about the next part. The sort of generational divide is how they call it. Mentorship in churches may face a generational divide, and what the data sort of says here. So as they report, they say older churchgoers are largely unengaged in mentorship. And so the question they asked was, do you currently have a mentor in your life? A mentor is a trusted and experienced advisor or guide who provides someone, the mentee, with support, guidance, and knowledge. And of the 5 generations here, the elders, boomers, Gen X, there you go, Gen X, shout out, millennials, and Gen Z, elders, 76% of them said no, compared to Gen Z, only 14% of people said no.
And
And
I would say
that's
that's
huge.
it is, but at the same time, you would not expect maybe that the older generations would be the ones being mentored. You would think that they would be the ones like actually doing the mentoring, which it does get into that in a little bit too. Um, so I think that data is kind of talking more uh, about that dynamic, that Gen Z, as you know, the younger generation, that they are still open to being mentored because they realize that they don't know everything, and then they need somebody to walk alongside them. And the next one too, millennials, is just as high,
Right.
which I think that was surprising, um, especially with the next set of data that I won't get into yet. But um, yeah, I just think that millennials that was surprising too. That they 83%
What's
say they have a
surprising
mentor.
about it? Why?
Because I don't know, I think that we're, like, in that, maybe it's just because 'cause we're still in that transitional, when I say we, I'm a millennial, so that's why I say it. We're in that transitional phase where we may be starting to do more mentoring than being mentored, uh, but 83% of us are saying that we still have a mentor, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that is a positive thing about the millennial generation, is that we also realize that we don't have all the answers, so we need help.
Right. But I mean, I would even go further and say that so Gen X, they say 65% have a mentor, and boomers, 42% of people have a mentor.
Hey, we
And
didn't leave out
so,
Gen X this time.
right. And so to me, like that's, I, th- I think this challenges our general train of thought that the older you get, the less help you need.
Mhm.
Right. I think the older I get, the more independent I'm supposed to be, the more I'm supposed to know things, the more I'm supposed to need others less. And I mean, you see this, it's a general arc basically
Mhm.
from, it is bared out in that. But you think about from the sense of 42%, I mean, we'll round down to 40. That means 40 out of 100 boomers have someone who they would consider a mentor. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
That
pretty
feels
good.
really high. Like you think about my grandparents or my parents as part of Gen X, that's 65% of them say they have a mentor. That's 65 out of 100 people.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't look to my parents and say, wow, mom and dad, you really need to get a mentor. Right. But
We should try
yet,
saying that to our parents at some point and see what their reaction is.
but I mean, you look at this and they say, hey, they have those people in their life. And so even though there is this sense of people don't have a mentor when they get older, I think there's a part of faith that really pushes us to say we're never done. And that then maybe, it just as a mentor, as a trusted and experienced advisor, it doesn't have to be hey, this person is 30 years older than me, because at a certain point, there isn't someone who's 30 years older than you, right? You are that person.
Mhm.
But we all have people in our life that even are the same age as us that we say, I trust that person. They're more experienced than I am. And I know that they're going to
Totally.
guide me with that same thing. And so, as a follower of Jesus who knows that my sanctification to be made holy is not done until I'm in the ground, I hope that, when I'm Barry's age and, we're doing real virtual avatar, conversations in person with a headset on all the time, or whatever alternate reality we live in, that I'm just as curious and just as wanting to learn from whoever it is that I'm walking with, or someone else in my life, because frankly, I think that's the task and the invitation, we'll use that word, that Jesus gives to us. So let's talk about the next part.
Yeah,
The
so this is
am I
where I was surprised.
interested or not?
Yeah, like, so 26% of millennials are currently mentoring, which, again, I think that number is pretty high, but to me, that is like, a very promising statistic, because oftentimes we get or we had in the past gotten the negative rap that, we're lazy, we don't want to do anything, we grew up in the .com age, etc. That 26% of millennials are currently mentoring something, and 52% on top of that are interested in doing it. So
Sure.
that is,
and it's the biggest percentage of all the 5 generations that are currently mentoring someone, which to me sort of, I don't know, grinds
both
against
sides of the coin. It's
right.
the millennials are willing to mentor, but also be mentored. So
Right.
yeah, I think that was very surprising for me. Both sides of that were, but then also just 10% of the older generations than boomers, 13% of boomers. So I'm a little surprised that those numbers are as low.
Absolutely.
That oftentimes we think of the boomers as still the ones who are the mentors for everybody, and I think that they think of themselves in that way too. Generalizations here, like I understand I'm generalizing. Let me be very clear. But yeah, that number was very shocking too. But not only that, but 45% of boomers said they do not want to be a mentor.
I am not interested. Don't bother me.
Good luck. Maybe it's the whole like, good luck, we had to figure out on our own, so you need to figure out on your own too.
Right. And then this is where the whole, just because we would think and hope that, hey, I want to learn from someone who's lived life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this stuff kind of says that that's not happening and that people don't even want it. That if you're, so Gen X is a little different. They're more similar to the millennials. So 28% of Gen X said, no, I'm not interested. And at 18% of them are doing it currently. And so that is the sort of, hey, this are my parents, your mom, and that generation. But it's interesting, or maybe it's a little sad, I think. And maybe this is different in the church. This is, I guess it is church going adults. So they're not surveying the general population. These are church going people. Like, what has happened that has made the boomers and elders generations not be interested in mentoring people, right? That what has caused that, I don't know, and I'm good where I'm at,
Well, and it may just be a life stage thing too, where the 4 barriers to active engagement are there, that they may not be busy in the sense of work or a lot of other things, but they're retiring or on their way out of work, so they're transitioning into something else. So I think there's a lot of things that we could look at there, but the elders, that one is a little bit more interesting. Like, maybe they just don't have they don't think they have the wherewithal or the energy to do it anymore. I don't know. Like, that would be interesting to sit down and talk with these people who filled this out and gave this information. Like, why did 42% of you say you don't want to do this?
Because as someone who's in the millennial generation, I would love to be mentored by someone who's in that generation. I think I am currently, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's just, it's one of those, like, hey, if there's people who want this, it's sad to see that doesn't maybe want to be reciprocated in that way, I think, is the thing that I'm saying. And of course, it's not everyone, right? So we're not talking about all people here. It's just the general majority, according to this study, say no, and I'm not interested. And I would say, hey, we're in the body of Christ, and some of the most beautiful things happen in cross-generational conversations, right? So, I forget, 2 or 3 years ago, I went to a breakout session at Best Practices in Phoenix, where church workers, present on things that they're doing. I'm looking for a book now, and I'm not seeing it. But he talked about aging, and I think I was one of the youngest people in the room. But it was very interesting, like the way he led people through the conversation. the thing I left with was people perceive themselves to not have stuff to offer. That to be old means you don't have the same things you used to be able to means you need more help, that you don't have, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And yet, as Paul writes, we need each other, right? We need the body of Christ, the arms, the legs, the eyes, the ears. We need one another. And so I would argue that one of the best ways people who are in those later generations can serve and do the task and the job of ministry that God has given to them is to share their experience with those people, right? To share their love with them and to share what they've come to know, how they've experienced God's faithfulness over the course of their life. So nevertheless, I think a very, to me at least, surprising thing that, hey, we would say, hey, well, yeah, everyone, you just pair up the younger people with the older people, and then we've got great mentorship. And I think this says, well, not that simple. It's not that easy.
And maybe it's surprising because of our context here, though, too, that I would say that we do have a lot of church members that don't probably fit this mold. I'm not going to say don't probably. I would say that they don't fit this mold. And so maybe it's more surprising in that context because of that, that we're not seeing that necessarily here to this extent, maybe.
Right. That's fair. I would say that's a fair summary. And again, this plays out too. So community, you're relationally connected with more people. When you come into worship and are there once a month, it increases if you come more. You're connected with people as you engage with various groups or various gatherings, we'll use that word. And then it also increases when you think about, hey, I have a mentor, whether it's here at this church or some other church that's walking with me, that's helping me, give me support and guidance. Well, if you have someone who you feel like you can go to and trust, that's probably going to increase your relational well-being, your relational satisfaction even more so too. And so I think we sort of come full circle in all of this, that the power of community, maybe we'll frame it this way, is that it helps us not do church tricks, but to be followers of Jesus in all that we think, say, and do as we learn, live, and love like he does too. So any closing thoughts, Derek, today?
Yeah, I would just say, if you want to find a community, find a church. If you want to be discipled and have a mentor, get engaged. If you want to be a mentor, get engaged and help share the love and knowledge that you have been given. And watch the Holy Spirit move, and watch the Holy Spirit not only move through you, but through the people that you are talking to, you're discipling, and then watch them disciple others. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. So get connected and get engaged.
I'm not going to say anything else other than we're glad that you've been here this week as we've gathered around the well that is Jesus and the power of his body, the bride, the church, to be who he has made it to be on this earth, a representation of him and his love for the world. So wherever you are, God is with you, and we will catch you next week as we gather around the well.